Welcome to the very first episode of the Missed Retrospective, and thank you for joining us here for a very special occasion as we are going to be talking to Kevin Bernhardt about Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio at Halloween Havoc. Now, I know usually when podcasts are posted here to YouTube, there's a video accompanying it, but unfortunately, I was unable to get my equipment to work the way that I wanted it to and for it to have quality. So, since I am very big on quality, I'm going to go and release these few first episodes without video until I am able to do so. You're going to be seeing a bit of an intro here like you are right now. That way you guys can go ahead and enjoy the rest of the podcast. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy my chat with Kevin Bernhardt about Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio at Halloween Havoc. I'm actually very excited to have you here because this is going to be the first episode that I've ever recorded. So you're going to be the very first guest.
Oh,
is there pressure on you at all right now?
A little bit of pressure now. I didn't know that.
We're going to have more guests. Obviously, I think you're going to be one of the best people that I have on this thing and this idea that I've had where literally we're just trying to cover my blind spot in wrestling, right? So I started watching wrestling in 2004, or I say 2004 because that's when WrestleMania 20 was. And I remember getting a tape and I just fell in love with it. Anything before then, I kind of maybe like took a little peeks at it here and there and everything. But now that I've gotten older and, I'm a commentator here for Reality of Wrestling and everything, I'm like, I got to know more stuff just because, history is very important. Because then you can, exactly. I'm one of the historians. Right. There's more to it than that. We'll get to that in a second. Right. But, there's things that you watch where you see the history, where it came from, where people get ideas, where people get, new things to kind of rehash in a sense and everything. Yeah. And that's kind of where I got the idea to do this and everything. So yes, you're right. I am called a historian here at Reality of Wrestling, but I have a massive blind spot. And that's what I'm here to fix. So I'm here with Kevin Bernhardt. So Kevin, for those of you that don't know, what do you do here at Reality of Wrestling?
So I'm the director, booker, not Booker T, but the booker, and just kind of run the day-to-day operations of Reality of Wrestling.
What did you do to get to that spot?
So I wrestled since I was 13. So I've been in wrestling for the last 24 years, 23 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing this a long time, over half my life.
So you have a little bit of knowledge onto what goes into this, right? It's really funny too because every time people talk about Reality of Wrestling, obviously we know Booker T and Sharmell run everything here. They're the ones that came up with this idea to begin with 20 years ago. But what a lot of people don't know is that you're also one of the biggest minds here that you can go to and get advice and see the little things, as Booker always likes to tell us. And funny enough, I'm gonna try my hardest to not peel the curtain far too much to where I'm giving Booker's secrets away. I may say his Bookerisms, but I'm not going to just outright be like, oh, that's exactly what this means, or this is what that means, and this is what that taught me and everything. I'll drop little things here and there. For example, he says this on NXT all the time, but preparation's the only luck you're ever going to have.
That's quote.
And up until recently, that's finally unlocked my brain. I was like, I get it now. And so, that's kind of where this idea came from and everything, just to kind of, get a little bit more into the field. So with that said, with this first episode, I actually wanted to cover Halloween Havoc, 1997, Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero in a title versus mask match, which, as a matter of fact, I had never watched. I played it on 2K because that was part of the showcase that they did for the video game, but I didn't realize just how deep it went. And I actually, hold on, I forgot to pull out my phone here. I have notes of things that I wanted to hit up on and just, to talk about, because my God, what a match that was.
Yeah, that was one of the first matches or early on matches that really got me into wrestling. I was already into wrestling. Mm-hmm. It was around this time period though. I got it in 96. So I hadn't been watching wrestling that long. Mm-hmm. And so this storyline was actually in that first year of getting into wrestling and sucking me in. And what a time to get sucked into wrestling with just the history of that match and the history of the luchadors and Mike Tenay being the other historian. Mm-hmm. Who just told those stories so well and made you actually feel it and invest in that match.
So you said that this is when you got into wrestling. So does this mean that you were more of a WCW guy rather than WWF at the time?
Yeah, I started WCW. That was my thing.
So what drew you into WCW over WWF?
So I started watching the day after Hogan turned heel. Mm-hmm. I was, I never watched wrestling before. I was probably 10 or something like that. And one of my friends was over on a Monday night and said, hey, we have to turn on TV right now. It's let's go outside. Let's go play. Mm-hmm. And he was like, nope, we got to turn on. Wrestling's on. It's the biggest night ever. He was hyping it up. So all right, we'll turn wrestling on. Never watched it. The first match I think I ever saw, or at least what I remember was seeing, was Rey Mysterio versus Dean Malenko. And I was a martial arts guy. Like, I loved martial arts. That was my whole childhood growing up. And to me, it was just like a real life martial arts fight scene. It was just two guys going there punching and kicking and flipping. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I'm watching a ninja fight live on TV. And I can watch this every Monday. And then, of course, the Hogan storyline and the NWO. It was just such a big moment. So if you're going to get sucked in, like, it was the great month of wrestling to get sucked in.
And it was just all the poltergeist of everything. Obviously, you talk about Hogan turning heel and everything. One of the biggest things that ever happened in wrestling up to that point at that time. So I can see how WCW kind of got your attention.
I didn't know WWE was a thing, or WWF back then. Like, it was probably a year before I ever even knew. Same friend. I was up late. We were staying the night at his house, and we snuck into the living room to watch Shotgun Saturday Night. So with the intro of like the girl dancing and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, "What is this?" Because WCW was very like family friendly. I could say butt instead of ass. You know, it was like very PG. So when I was seeing that, like the first thing I see is like DX and a girl dancing, and I'm like, "Okay, I got to watch this too." But it was probably like a year before I ever saw it.
That's awesome. That's actually something very interesting too, because like now in today's day and age, I've heard about people getting into TNA before WWE.
Yeah.
So you kind of get that feeling as well of like that's what happened, and that's kind of how people got into wrestling at that point. So that's actually like really interesting to see that people got into WCW before WWE, and that's kind of just how it happened and everything. So with the match that we're talking about today, obviously the history of the match was the Cruiserweights coming to WCW, which at the time was not really something that we had seen or heard of much in that era of WCW. So did you get much to like you knowing the history of WCW? Was that like something really new to WCW at the time?
Yeah, going back, I'm a big person of going back and watching everything. And, watching now, because originally that's all I knew. One of the first matches I ever saw was Rey Mysterio. So, not understanding what the, like, the significance of it was until you go back and watch it. Because for me, that was like the opening into my world. It was like, yeah, you had the Giants and that kind of stuff, but you had, the luchadors and the history. And again, for me, being a martial arts guy and that kind of stuff, seeing the flips and the acrobatics, that's what sucked me in originally. And of course, the stories kept me there, but that was the initial turn the TV on and see what's going on there was really what sucked me in.
So what do you think really set apart not just, Rey Mysterio as a cruiserweight, but Eddie Guerrero? Because Eddie Guerrero was a bigger guy than what you would typically see in a cruiserweight.
Yeah. I really like the cruiserweight division in WCW because, of course, they were smaller, but everybody played a role. And I don't think enough people really think about that. The role, what I look at there was get Rey Mysterio over. So much of it because, they brought in guys like Psychosis. They brought in guys like the Villanos and La Parca. And their job was to get the smaller cruiserweights over. They were the bases. So they're there to base for you and make sure you can hit all your big moves and look cool. And again, it's so much of the people, if you watch the structure of the company, was, yes, we have these guys, but these are the ones we're really going after. Rey's going to be the top guy. Eventually, Hoovy was the guy. And they use these other guys to make sure they look good. Eddie started a little bit different because, he started off not as much a cruiserweight guy. He was wrestling Flair and, Steamboat and these kind of guys. And then eventually kind of leaned into more of the cruiserweight division.
So that's actually something too that you talk about the history of Eddie Guerrero. That's something that Mike Tenay really put over in the match, and that's something that I was listening to because again, he was the professor, he was the historian, the original historian. And one thing that me knowing from commentary, from stuff that I've learned, from Booker, from Vic Joseph, from Blake Chadwick, and everything, just to say a few names of people that have like taught me the WWE style, if you will. It's like you want to make sure to, yes, like maybe call the moves here and there because there's still a match going on, but you want to tell the history of why it's important that these two guys are fighting. Everybody's got eyes. Everybody can clearly see what's going on the TV, but if you're just repeating what's happening on the TV, that doesn't really add gravitas to the fight itself. You really got to, put over the story of how did these two start? And that was something that I actually didn't know, that Rey Mysterio started not as Rey Mysterio. That was the name that he earned from his uncle, and that was just a quick thing that Mike Tenay said on commentary, and immediately I'm like, I I've been watching this for over 20 years now, and I had no idea that Rey Mysterio didn't automatically start a Rey Mysterio. And I thought that was a really cool thing, just from a commentary standpoint as well, that the story was just put over that Eddie Guerrero was just that big of a dude that, you know, he was just threatening to take the mask for more than just pride and more for than just the title. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I like so much in rewatching this match. Of course, you know it when you don't notice when you watch it live. The first time, you know, you're sucked in. You don't know any better. You're just watching it. It's good commentary. Watching it now, because I watched it when you sent me the link again, and I haven't watched probably in 10 years. And one of the biggest things I took away from that match, more than the wrestling and everything, was the commentary and everybody's roles, because they told such a good story of the, you know, the mask and the history and all that. Just the little things like it could have been a throwaway line with, you know, hey, he was the hummingbird, this, that, the other. And then you have Bobby Heenan make a little quip. He's like, the hummingbird. And then they kind of defend it. It puts it back in your brain. Instead of just a throwaway line, Bobby Heenan makes it something, and then they go and reinforce it of, yeah, the hummingbird means this, that, you know, and I was like, oh, okay, now I'm like, really, I remember that line. I remember that story. Instead of, again, just commentators just throwing out random verbiage. It actually played the most in the story watching as well. So many people try and do the underdog story, and it's been played a million times. And it really only works when the commentary team makes it work. If they're just talking about random stuff, or they're talking about, you know, oh, he just needs that ref needs to throw in the towel, he's getting beat up too much. Great, that works. But so much of what they did was put over that this is what happens to Rey. He gets beat up, he'll never stop. He keeps going. Look at him just crawl. Like at one point, he gets thrown in the ring, and he just crawls to the rope. And they're putting over on his belly crawling. And again, it tells that story. And if you don't notice it live, or if the commentary team are just like, oh, they just throw in the towel, he's just taking too much abuse, you're like, oh yeah, they should just throw in the towel. Versus you say, this is what he does. He's the, you know, he will never quit. He'll never do this and that. Look at him crawl. Then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, you know. And again, it's just the commentary's role.
It's the way that, you know, you emphasize the story, right?
Yes.
Because there's always two ways that you can say something. You can be like, oh, that's a negative way to look at it, or that's a positive way to look at it. And when you're building up that underdog story, you always want to go the positive way. That's why John Cena has always been one of the biggest people, because he's always about never give up. Yep. But it was never about like, oh, the Miz is doing all this stuff to him, he's never going to get out of it, blah, blah, whatever, all that stuff. It was, how did John Cena do this? Oh, my God. And then you just build it up from there. And that's ultimately what makes him seem like more of an underdog than usual.
Yeah, and that's what got Rey over so much. I look at guys, and I don't, you know, won't say any names of wrestlers and this and that, like, but even big wrestlers on TV and other companies doing all the flips, all the moves, all those things. Great, they can do it better than Rey could. But Rey told stories. He was telling stories in that match. He's selling his ass off, which so many guys didn't do. You know, so many wrestlers, you know, as soon as they were back up, they're running, hitting the ropes, doing a flip. The reason I look at it and say Rey got over as much as he did was he sold. He sold, and then he would get his big comebacks, and he would sell, and he'd sell, and he'd sell. Versus, again, most guys in that division, especially, it was about just fast-paced action. So, yeah, they'd sell when they were in a move, but then 10 seconds later, they're full sprint again, and it's going.
It's funny that you say that the pace that Rey Mysterio sets and everything, because that's something that actually caught my eye right out of the gate. That as soon as the match started, they're just going a million miles per hour. And when I saw the video, it was only like 12 and a half minutes long. I was like, there's no way they can keep this pace up this whole time. And the fact that they kind of did, aside from, the rest spots, that, there was the bow and arrow spot, and then the gory special spot, I could tell that's like, knowing what I know now, that's the spot that they're taking moments to breathe a little bit. Yeah. But then every single time there was some action going on from Rey Mysterio, it was some absurd move that I've never seen before, like the top rope DDT, like flip and everything. I was like, how is he pulling this off and still staying fresh, still making this look great? Because, again, that was something that you don't really see in today's day and age. Like, there's a big move that's hit, and then you're down for maybe a minute or so, like trying to catch your breath, or get that ire from the audience and everything. But there was only one spot that I saw in there that happened, and it was towards the end when they were about to go into the finish. The rest of the match was just nonstop going, and until Eddie Guerrero cut him off and got that one move, it was like, all right, cool, let's take a breather. But, you know, in the story, Eddie was mouthing off. He was tearing off the mask. He was just doing the things to, you know, get the audience to boo him because, again, that was his job as the heel, to get the sympathy for the babyface. Especially in a title versus mask match, you want to make sure that you're, you know, getting sympathy for the person that's about to potentially lose their mask. Something that means a lot to, you know, luchadors and just Mexican luchadors all over the place.
You know, it's funny. Booker always talks about, you know, action is movement, and it's not the actual moves. And this is a prime example of a match because Rey's not doing a ton. You've actually just watched the moves of what Rey does. A quarter of what a normal match now is. You know, like there's probably, if you just clip all just the moves that they do, you know, again, it's probably a quarter of a normal Ricochet match, you know. But the selling in between, and Eddie being the art masterful that he is, him walking around, his facial expressions, how he looks at the ref, how he looks at the crowd, how he gets on Rey and just puts some boots onto him. All that stuff without having to pick him up and shoot him off, without having to do the spot. Again, it's so much action, but at the same time, it's not even half of what you see today. But it seemed so much, even watching it now, because of the way Rey's selling. He's always moving. He's always fighting. He's never just laying there. There's never these big down spots. Eddie, if Rey is down, Eddie's moving. Eddie's talking shit. Eddie's doing his stuff. So again, it's a quarter of what we see now, but seemed like it never stopped, which is the art of doing nothing. You know, it's another great Bookerism. And
it's fantastic that you should bring up that point too, because I showed this match to my wife, Heather, and she's not that big of a wrestling fan. I'm just going to say that right out of the gate for those of you guys that don't know. It's not that she doesn't like it. She doesn't fully understand it. She likes the stories. She likes, you know, the grandiose things of WWE and everything. But for her, the action itself kind of lacks. And whenever she sees like a near fall, she's like, well, why didn't they just stay down? Like they're getting beat up and everything. And it's something that I've yet to kind of like really overcome and explaining to her how it works and everything. But she watched this match with me and she's like, that was amazing. Like, why isn't wrestling like that? Why aren't you showing me more of this? And I'm like, that's why I fell in love with this stuff. And I even had to pause it midway through just to like talk to her about it, that the flow of the match was so smooth. And like you mentioned, there was no wasted motion. And that's something that, again, I always hear from Booker, like, you can't be wasting motions, you know, action, the line that you said, like, I hear that from him all the time. And every time I watch old stuff from, like, again, 04 or anything before then, I see it a lot, especially in Kurt Angle matches, Eddie Guerrero matches, you know, anything from before. I'm just like, this is what it was. And I recently watched WrestleMania 20, I want to say maybe like 6-7 months ago, and even the 4-way tag match that Booker was in for the World Tag Team titles. I was like, I see everything he teaches us all the time when he was in his prime, and I'm like, how has it evolved so much?
It's one of my favorites. So WrestleMania 20 is the triple threat main event, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. I just watched that one recently again because we had a triple threat coming up, and I was trying to explain to somebody how to make it a fight. You know, because it's so much, you know, too many triple threats are just spotty, and they feel spotty. And it's just, you know, hey, this guy goes and then goes out of the ring, we do our spots, and this guy comes back in. That match was such a fight. And if you watch it, it's still got a million spots. It's still choreographed. It's still moving. But there's so much just fight element in it towards punches and kicks and chops. And it's not just going from the whip off, shoot off, back elbow, whatever, to pick the guy up, suplex, boom, boom, boom. One guy dives in, breaks it up, throws him out of the ring, and then we get back to the next spot. Like there's so much in between fighting, in between all the spots, to where it makes it look like they're just fighting each other. And it's this big, you know, just tussle, and, you know, it's really raw. This match has the same thing. It's not clean. It's not just everything is the smoothest ever, just like Rey does a cartwheel. Normally in their other matches, he'd do like the cartwheel, go up to his shoulder, be on his shoulder, like a spin through. This time when he did it, he cartwheeled up, boom, Eddie caught him and just dropped him. It didn't look the cleanest. It wasn't some picture perfect, hey, he caught him perfectly on his legs and went backwards. He just caught him and went and slammed him. That's the stuff to me that makes wrestling feel more real. There's a wrestler here, he's way better about it now, but I used to get on to Eric Lockhart a lot. Because everything, and again, his wrestling is the smoothest, even now. But before, his wrestling was so smooth, and it was so crisp and so good that it looked choreographed, because there was no flubs, there was no anything, which again, you would think would be a great quality. It's like zero flubs, zero, you know, waste of motion.
Perfection, yeah.
Perfect. But in wrestling, it's not supposed to be perfect. It's a fight. It's two guys tussling and fighting. So Eddie at one point, you know, grabbing him by the mask and trying to pull him up, and Rey not coming up. And then having to like pull him, and like Rey's still down, and then finally like grabs him and yanks him. You know, it's like that's a moment, like that means so much. Which I just had some little quick thing I remembered when you were talking about this was we hear so much about maximizing minutes in the pro wrestling indie scene, and it wasn't until a few years ago. I've always heard that, and I was always like, oh, if you got 5 minutes, maximize those minutes by not even just to do as much as you can in that 5 minutes, but everything you do needs to be so crisp, and like every move needs to be perfect to maximize your minutes. And somebody broke this to me down maybe less than a year ago, and it blew my mind. And it was this match with Eddie had the perfect example of that. When the bell rang, before the bell rang, they're just standing there walking. They walk around the ring. That 10 seconds of walking around the ring is maximizing your minutes, because they're not just walking. Eddie's got a look on his face. He's yelling at Rey. He's doing the mask. All these little things is getting over personality traits. It's getting over a story from the bell ringing to now we circle halfway around the ring, we meet with each other, and then, we're about to get kicked off in the match. That 10 seconds is maximizing your minutes, getting something out of that 10 seconds rather than just walk around, let's get ready for the tie-up. Now we walk around, I'm showing my personality. How do I walk? You look at John Cena, he bangs it in the back of the corner, ropes, and he goes. He does the same thing all the time. He's prepping himself up. Booker does a stretch on the ropes where he's stretching and getting ready while the guy's doing his thing. Boom, and then when the bell rings in WCW, kind of jump up and down, then he start walking. Those things are getting over personality traits. They're getting over who you are. Who am I as a character? And not doing the generic like, is this your guy? Is this your fan favorite? Like you see so much on the indies. Because that's not doing anything. It's not getting you over. It's not showing who you are. Versus Eddie was talking to Rey, like during that. He wasn't yelling at the crowd, I'm going to take his mask. He was telling Rey, I'm going to take your mask and humiliate you. But he's saying it loud enough that the crowd gets in it. They can hear it. Now they can boo. It's just such a little thing. But, man, it sets the stage for the fight.
And something, too, that kind of to add to that, too, to the, talking to Rey himself, but enough for the crowd to hear it. He also does it with his body language, which is something that, we talk about too here at Reality of Wrestling, where you want to make sure that the people in the nosebleeds can see exactly what you're doing, even if there are no nosebleeds. A lot of seats here are fantastic seats at Reality of Wrestling, but we want to prep you for, the bigger stage where you perform at the Toyota Center and everything, and to where people are all the way up top. You always want to be in that mentality of that is the crowd that I'm performing for, the ones all the way up there. That way everybody feels it. And that was something, again, that I saw in this match itself. Just that body language, which, again, you think it doesn't go a long way, but it's such an insane skill to have that really like catapults you, I feel, to that next level, because you're practicing how you perform, which is, again, something that we do here at Reality Wrestling as well. So, it's just amazing to go back again all the way to 97 and to see that happen. And now, like, it's I don't want to say it's a lost start, because there's still some amazing wrestlers that do that very same stuff, but to see it again performed at 97, I can see why to this day Eddie Guerrero is still studied like crazy.
Yeah. The little things, like one of the things that really stuck out to me was the surfboard. So he's got him on the ground, the little surfboard on the ground. How big Eddie's chest is up. Like, he's got him down, he's hooked him, and he's all the way up. Yeah. Like, he's posing. I guarantee you somewhere out there in the world, there's pictures of that. There's, screenshots of Eddie looking jacked right there. That's probably a thumbnail for some of the videos, because you got Rey's mask ripped, you've got him, Rey's faces. I tell people all the time here at class, there's a million better moves in wrestling that just don't get used. There's a million holds and things in wrestling that, like, have just gone by the wayside. The reason the ones that stuck around is because they look cool. Like, the reason a headlock or a rear chin lock is so prominent in wrestling is because you can sit somebody down, they're on their ass, they're sitting up, you're in a chin lock, you can put your chest out. There's probably a million better holds. But their face is shown, my face is up and shown. The reason the top wrist lock being up here with somebody sitting down, look how exposed I am. Everybody can see my face. The guy in it can be hooked, can be looking out in the crowd. That's why that hold stood the test of time. Boston Crab, this, that, the other. The surfboard, when he's got him there, and he can prop up. Again, there's a million better moves. And that's one of the reasons the greats have used so many of these same moves, because, again, it makes you look so cool.
And, to talk about it a little bit more too, like, obviously we know what he evolved into after that match was light cheating and stealing along with Chavo and everything. But just seeing it on highlight in this match as well, the cheating that he did was, again, no wasted motion. It wasn't just to get the upper hand. It was to set up his own moves too, pulling at the mask, to make sure that he gets the vision and everything. And then he pulls him up by the mask to get him into a suplex and stuff like that. It's those little things that I feel some people are still missing this day now, that, again, no wasted motion. That's something that I wish I saw more prominently now, because watching it back, I'm just like, this is what I missed in wrestling. And it's why I went back and watched Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero from WrestleMania 20 a few months ago. I was like, why do I still love this just as much? Like, what was different? And that's when I started noticing, like you mentioned, the spottiness, right? Yeah. Which there's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
You need spots.
But I love Oz, Aiden Cristiano here at Reality of Wrestling. I always hear him joke. It's like, we're just going to go out there and work. We're not going to practice anything. And he's probably one of the people that I see like almost never practice stuff unless it's by the other person. And he just wants to make sure that they're going to be okay and everything. But other than that, that dude can just go out there and just have an amazing match no matter what. So, that's something that I appreciate from Aiden Cristiano, that he's still able to do something like that in the year 2025.
Yeah, when it's very, very rare right now. And it's rare because the business has evolved, with so much, again, the action has, gotten faster, the spots have become more. I do feel like there's still a place, and you still can do that exact match Eddie and them did today and be just as over, be just as big. It's just a big, again, trying to find out how to do character moments. And it gets hard. One of the things that we've also talked about a lot is, I'm going to use Ricochet as an example. And I love Ricochet. I think he's one of the best. And he's actually doing a lot more of it now in AEW than he ever has, which is awesome. You can't really get over and show your personality while you're running. It's hard to tell me who you are other than you can do something cool when you run, or when you're doing a flip, or when you're doing an action. I use it for the gymnastics routines, like, Olympics, this, that, the other, floor routines. Girls doing the thing, does all the flips, going boom, 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 we all applaud. And then they have like 10 seconds or so of like little dance moves, and they twirl and they do stuff, and they, move their shoulders around, and they smile and they wink at judges and this, that, the other. That's what draws people in. I don't think somebody would watch the floor routines if it was just do your flips from corner to corner, stop, pose, do another set of flips, corner to corner, corner to corner, stop, pose, now give me my score. It wouldn't be as entertaining. That's one of the highest rated, routines or things they have on the Olympics or on the gymnastics teams is like the floor routines. Because again, it shows personality. You can't show a personality while we're doing Duck 3, Hurricane Rana. But in between that is when we get to show that. And that's what Eddie did so well in this. Rey didn't get a huge opportunity, and he really didn't a lot in his matches. His story was being the underdog, being the smallest guy, which is a hard thing to sell. There can only be one. And that's another thing that's hard for people is you can't have 10 of that on a roster. You can't have 5 of that on a roster. There's going to be one guy that can, Mikey Whipwreck in ECW could be the one person that could be the guy that just got beat up and beat up and beat up and then did cool things and got wins. And the other part is that you have to win. We have underdog kind of stuff where they lose a lot, which is, I get it, because, we're trying to be, hey, we're selling somebody else right now. But it's the reason like Spike Dudley and WCW or WWE didn't really work, as well. When you're the underdog and you're not picking up wins every time or almost every time or a lot, then you're just a guy that got beat up a lot and did, great career, but you're never going to get to that next level. Like ECW, he'd get beat up all the time, thrown around, killed, and then would win, like more than he lost.
Do you think with that kind of mindset, like shock wins do more for the underdog or do less for the underdog? Because I would say that this was kind of like a shock win the way that it ended. It was like super quick.
Yeah. I think telling the story you're going to tell, Rey didn't always just get beat up, with certain matches, certain things. I like this thought of it can come out of anywhere, which was one of Rey's big things, was like he could hit the Hurricane Rana of anywhere. So even if he's getting beat up the entire match, he could still hit that from any position and could finish a match. I do feel like that helps the story and long-term storytelling, because no matter how much you're not watching, or like you didn't tune out a lot of a Rey Mysterio match because it could end any time. So you really watched and you were like, if he can just get in, just do it. So versus other guys, if they have like a big setup for their finish and they always have to hit their finish, like Spike hitting the Dudley Death Drop, I do feel like if you build it as a finishing move, it's got to be set up and all that kind of stuff. It does take away a little bit. Versus, I use Brett as an example of this all the time too. Brett would win with a million different things. Like everybody thinks about the sharpshooter, but Brett won just as many matches with small packages and roll-ups and as he did with the sharpshooter probably. Later in his career, probably did more of the sharpshooter, but so much of his career was surprise wins, which I feel like is another thing. I don't want to say missing in wrestling, but it was a lot cooler when it could still come out of nowhere.
And that's actually something too that Gunther does nowadays too. He has the power bomb. Yeah. He's got I forget the last symphony, that sidewalk slam that he does, and he has the splash. He's got the rear naked choke, like literally everything. And again, blind spots, right? I have not seen many Bret Hart matches. He's on my list. He's going to be covered on the episodes. Don't worry, guys. But that's also something that I didn't know about Bret Hart. You talk about the sharpshooter. That's literally all that I always saw and that I always thought, because I'm not as educated as I should be on Bret Hart. So that's actually really interesting that that's something that I have to look forward to. And again, with Rey Mysterio, same thing. His wins could really just come out of nowhere, and this one really came out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, like I said, it was always a big thing that. Again, he could hit that out of anywhere, and did a lot of roll-ups as well. But, man, you can hit a hurricane run out of a lot of positions. Anytime you're up, you can, spin into one, come out of one. So it was really nice. And again, he had a great cast of people to do it to that he'd worked for years and years. He had been working Psychosis and these guys in Mexico and all around the country for years. So once they got to WCW, they'd already had the routines down. They had their movesets down. They had their chemistry. And then it was a matter of just doing it in front of a national audience or a worldwide audience, which I think really is another thing that's hard now, because you don't have many people that can surprise you. You normally have seen them through NXT. You've seen them through the systems. Now with the internet, even if it's somebody that just came off the indies, you've seen them for 5 years. It's really that's why like a Braun Breaker, I think, got over so well so quickly, because we didn't see him for, he was just a natural. So you saw him year one, and you're like, this guy's amazing, which is rare. But like at that time period, you had so many people that the first time you ever saw them, they had already been doing it for 10 years, and you'd never heard of them, and they've been wrestling these same people like that one, to where you're like, where did this person come from? Amazing. And again, it's a harder part now, is it's harder to surprise people with like a new face that just comes out of nowhere and is a 10-year vet.
Mm-hmm. So with, talking about, the timing of stuff, right? Did you feel like this match felt like 12 minutes?
No. So that's a funny thing. Matches, depending on how sucked in you are, can either feel so fast or feel like they were like long match, but in like a good way. Like it didn't feel like it was rushed. It never felt any way. This is one of those like deceiving matches, because it feels like it goes by way faster to me. But just because it's, like I said, it's so good. But there's so many matches, and I guarantee if I watch it another time, it might feel like it's like a 30-minute classic. And I'm like, wait, that was only 12 minutes? Which is, again, depending on the mood you're in when you're watching. Like this time I was watching, like trying to figure out how they got all that, so I remember it being a classic. But yeah, there's sometimes where you see a match, and you're like, then you see the match time, and you're like, what? I thought this was like a 30-minute classic. And you're like, it was 12 minutes bell to bell, if that.
How much do you think that these two guys practiced backstage before they went out there? Do you think they just all called it out there?
No, I think it was all out there. I think you probably have some moves that you like, hey, I want to try this, or hey, we should be able to hit this. And again, when you work those so many times, every spot they did, and this is another thing that I miss about certain kinds of wrestling, is even though there were spots, even though there was, big sequences, nothing was ever, which is what I love about wrestling, nothing was ever so complicated that you couldn't do it on the fly. I use, and man, this is going to sound mean, because, and again, they're great. I have no issues with anybody. Look at the Young Bucks. And I try and give examples to people here, is you could reverse something on somebody. You could duck something, like in a fight, and something that kind of seems realistic. They might even be able to throw something at you, and you'll block it, or you would duck theirs. The chances of a third duck or reversal in like any kind of just fight would be so hard. Like if I duck something of yours and you kick and I duck it, and then I were to throw something else and you duck it, or now we're getting into like a choreographed scene. Same thing with like duck one clothesline. Like if you duck a clothesline, they come back, they hit you with something, or you hit them with something. Maybe we duck two, and then we do something. But if we get to duck 2, I go to, you grab my arm, duck underneath, we block off, throw a kick, grab my kick, spin me around. Like, now we've just gotten into a choreographed fight scene, which we have to talk in the back, because there's no way we're going to be able to talk to, like, call that out there on the fly. Everything they did, though, was one sequence. It was, we're going to go up top, I'm going to hit your feet, you're going to fall down and do the, the tree of woe spot. Mm-hmm. He can kick you, say move. Then he can go, and all Rey has to do is move. Okay, I know what he's going to do. I'm going to do the sit-up when he comes in. Boom, he slides in, we sit up. He goes to the outside. Okay, he wants me to dive. Like, it's all stuff that you could do on the fly or do with very little conversation. There was nothing that was so complex that you couldn't just feel it. John Cena talks about it all the time. One of the reasons, like, people hear him talk, or people hear what he's saying, or he's not doing complex stuff. He wants to be able to listen to the crowd and determine there on the spot, what do they want from me right now? What do they need from me? All right, do we need more heat? Do we need to make a little comeback real quick? Just a little bit of gray? And you can't do that in the back, which is why Cena matches are so emotional, and people get so, the chants are always there and the stuff's always there, because that's all he's going for. He's not going for a 5-star classic. He's going for, right now the crowd needs me to fire up a little bit, and that'll keep them on the edge of their seat. No, they're not quite there yet. Originally, I want to make a comeback right now, like in my brain, but they're not quite there yet. Let's do another 20 seconds of heat. We'll get them there. And I feel like that's what Eddie was all doing. Like, this whole match, he was just listening and feeling the crowd. And like, there was a couple of times where he put a little more heat on Rey, and it was like, yeah, if they had been going crazy right there, he probably would have had him fire back quicker. Mm-hmm. But he didn't. He was like, hey, we're going to build him. And that's one of those where talking in the back can really hurt, where you're just doing cool stuff versus, LA Knight, I look as a big person that does that kind of stuff. Like, it's so crowd oriented because he's wanting the chants, he's wanting the stuff, which to me is what wrestling is. Mm-hmm. It's just crowd interaction. And they did so much more of that. Again, people have their opinions of him. I've got my opinions of him. I look at Hogan as one of the best to ever do that, in the sense of, we're going to do very little like wrestling stuff. All it's going to be is, when does the crowd want me to fire up? When do they want me to start making a comeback? And can we tease them by making a little comeback and then getting put back down just to make them come up higher later? Zero moves, zero anything like that. It was just, Lex Luger was another one. He doesn't get enough credit. I go back and watch WCW Lex Luger matches, like, oh yeah, he doesn't do anything. And he's getting the crowd going crazy because he knows when to fire up. He knows when to get cut off. And he just plays that, he just rides that wave of listening to the crowd, and when they want to do something, he might give them a little bit, or he might give them a lot, just to get cut back off.
So you bring up LA Knight as a modern person that, goes along with the crowd and stuff like that, and feeds off of the crowd based on what he wants them to do. Mm-hmm. And, again, Booker talks to us always about, give the people what they want. They paid a ticket to see you. Who do you think right now, wherever, WWE, TNA, AEW, here in Raw, who do you think is one of the best people that is able to capture that essence of give the people what they want and just be able to work out there like that?
So somebody from here that now is doing great, and it's because of one thing, but Jey Uso. I look at it as, again, is his wrestling the greatest wrestler of all time? No. He found something the fans want to do. They want to eat. They want to do their chants. He gives them opportunities to do those, and then takes it away from them, and then rebuilds it, and then gets taken away from it. And knows when to ride it. Daniel Bryan was another one I thought was so good at that, especially during the Yes Movement. Like, the way he would control the crowd to when he wanted them to do it, when he wanted them to take it away. Probably one of the best. Daniel Bryan's probably one of the best at that, especially during that time frame. When, again, I hate to say wrestling isn't the main part, but it's when the Yes stuff was going on, is when he had the most interaction. Jey Uso with all the Yeet stuff, LA Knight with the Yeah. Again, that's just wrestling. Mm-hmm. It's just crowd participation. And wrestling is the only form of entertainment and the only form of any kind of sport where the fans can directly affect what happens in a ring. If I go to a movie theater, no matter how much I yell at a screen that the killer's behind the door, it's not going to affect if that person, if I were able to yell at the screen and say, the killer's at the door, don't open the door, and the person on screen was like, thank you. And then like I'd be like, oh my God, I made a difference. I did it. You know, I saved the day as a fan. Good wrestling, and this isn't all wrestling, but good wrestling is the ability to let the fans feel like they played a part in some way. And it's the only form of entertainment you can do that. You can't go to a football game. You try, they do. I mean, that's what the whole do in the football game. When they try and get the crowd, it's not working. You know, like you're not going to throw off a quarterback because you're making too much noise.
Sometimes you might.
I don't think so. I think it's bullshit. But again, I'm not a big sport. I mean, I'm a sports guy, but like maybe they won't hear the call or something. But it's a way to like make the fans feel like they did something. They're a part of the team. Mm-hmm. Wrestling is such a big part of that. And I'll say this a scenario for you. If I'm a bad guy and I'm beating up a babyface, beating him up, and a fan yells at me, and I turn my attention and like, shut up, sit down, even if I just look at him. And when I turn around, I tell the babyface, hit me. Bang, and they hit me. That fan is like, he got distracted because I did something, and now he's getting beat up because of me, which now makes him want to yell even louder the next time. Maybe I can help again. Maybe, even if it's not helping, even if they know it's entertainment. Like, still, the thing I did is what's going on TV right now. Mm-hmm. There's no other place you can do that.
And then the heel's going to use that as an excuse when they lose.
Exactly. And, like, you as a fan are like, this was because of me. This moment on TV, which you can't do anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Again, I think it's a lost art. I think very few people do it now because we're thinking about the match. I look at Kevin Owens as a great example that does it. Kevin Owens will let himself get over here and then get hit. Roman Reigns does a great job of the little things of looking out at a crowd or doing things or talking shit sometimes. And then it like coming back to bite him, especially when he's doing heel reigns, like pandemic era, like right afterwards when it's smaller crowds and you could hear your crowd doing stuff and he's talking to the fans and stuff like that. Such a good moment. And back in the day, like that's how they kept the territories going, was those moments. So again, it's a lost art in wrestling. And I do feel like it's the ones that still do it, the Cody Rhodes. Cody's probably, I didn't even think about Cody. Cody's probably one of them that's amazing of calling things on the fly. And you can tell he's calling stuff on the fly because it's going with her, and I don't know if everybody can always tell this, but it's like it's going where the fans are taking it, the matches sometimes. And again, where we're eventually going to go is going to go. Mm-hmm. Like, don't get me wrong that any wrestler's like, no, we just listen to the fans completely. I've got a blueprint. But the timing that it takes to get to this scenario, to this spot, is what it means by listening to the fans. Because eventually, look, we're getting to this spot. We're going to do the Duck 3 or whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's just a matter of how long do we take to get there or how quick do we get there? And then it becomes, okay, we got there super quick because the fans were there. Now, this 3 minutes that I thought it was going to take to do this, we had to fill this time in because they were here 2 minutes in. So I had to give them that 2 minutes in. Well, shit, I meant to do that 5 minutes in. Mm-hmm. Now I've got this time that's got to get, figured out, which is get the art of wrestling. It's great.
And I love the fact that we got on this tangent just talking about, like, do you think that they planned this backstage? Yeah. And now we just talked about this for like 7-10 minutes or so, which is fantastic because, again, it just goes to show how different wrestling has evolved now to where, they get, like you said, this feels like a lost art. And, again, that's not to say that people doing it now are doing it bad or doing it worse or anything because, wrestling's like ice cream. There's going to be different flavors. And I still love wrestling today. I still watch the product. I haven't missed an episode in like 20 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. But it just goes to show how maybe the next wave of wrestlers could potentially look at matches like that and evolve the game to where maybe the next wave is going to go back to that, because as we see, wrestling always goes in and out in waves, where right now, or I want to say maybe like 10 years ago, it was kind of like that indie style where we're going to do spots, high action, everything. That's why NXT Black and Gold was so successful at the time. And that's not to say NXT now is, not successful, because Trick Williams and Nova Femi are working different style of matches that are a little bit more old school, but they work. And it's just, again, different styles just come in waves and everything.
You have to be different. And to be different then was to do crazy high-paced, fast-paced matches. Became the Ring of Honor style, this, that, the other, just that fast-paced go. And, in the early 2000s or mid-2000s, that became the norm for 90% of wrestling. So what do you do to be different? You slow down. Mm-hmm. All right, we get, facials, we do this and that. Just the business in general changed in the sense of it was always, everybody was supposed to be the big, as big as we could in life. Then the pandemic hit, and they started doing very small screen to where Roman, doing a little eyebrow raise or a little quiver of his lip because it was like, hey, we're not thinking about the masses. We're looking at the small screen. And they started getting very cinematic with, hey, we want to do this scenario where, again, when something happens, I just need your eyes to shift and look over at Jay, you know? And that would have been, they never would have done that, you know, 15 years ago before, because it had to been a whole head look over and turn. And again, it just evolves. And eventually we're going to go, there's going to be somebody, when we start getting very small and we start making these little small nuances with the eyes, there's going to be somebody that comes out to be super big and over the boy and flamboyant. And then that's going to be the, you know, how he stands out. So you always have to figure out how to stand out. And when everybody starts going fast and spotty, how do you stand out? You go the other way. Mm-hmm. And then a bunch of people are going to recreate that because they're like, this is what's getting over. And we're already seeing on the indies too. Like we're seeing it everywhere. Like people trying to do more of a, you know, Roman style or this or that. And eventually that's going to become a lot of people doing that. How are we going to get over? I need to do more flips. You know, so it's just, it's always a cycle.
And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with something that I've recently learned and really focused on was the timing is everything.
Yeah.
Just because you're doing this way, this one way now, doesn't mean that in 7 years everybody's going to be doing it that way. So you need to change. And even then, you might not be the one that gets seen or chosen for that specific spot. But that doesn't mean, just because it's no now, doesn't mean that it's not going to be no later. Because you could find something else that's different, that just continues to be better. And to kind of, you know, flip that too is like Chris Jericho. He was never stagnant. He was always evolving. I still have my list of Jericho clipboard literally in my backpack just because that was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. But then he did the mute Jericho when he came back. And then he did, you know, the little bit of the bubbly Jericho over in AEW. And then he did, you know, all the Painmaker for New Japan. He just kept doing new things and he kept making everything work every single time. Even when this isn't working anymore, cool. Let's change it. Let's be new. Let's be different. Because, you know, that's kind of what wrestling is. It's going to keep evolving and changing.
Every time. Yeah, and, you know, Jericho was doing it before even that. He was doing it in WCW with the, when you say the list, the first thing I think of is the move list.
The 1,004 moves, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, and again, you're always, and you recycle. You know, so much of the stuff that he did in WCW, he was able to kind of do a little tweak in WWE because those people hadn't seen it yet. You know, right now, a perfect example of that is Joe Hendry. I didn't watch a lot of the TNA Joe Hendry. Like, I'd see clips, things like that. The original thing was, you know, when you say his name, he would appear out of somewhere, you know, ridiculous, like a refrigerator or this or that, or just coming out of a hallway or whatever it may be. Most of the fans never saw that. Not saying, you know, like TNA just didn't have a huge following at that point.
It's a different audience, yeah.
It's a different audience. So they done the music one, this, that, the other. They rode that wave. And now they went completely back to, now on TNA or NXT, he's popping out of places. And people are like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen, because they had never seen it before. It's what you were able to do back in the territory days. In the earlier days was you could do the same shtick in a bunch of different places, and it was always brand new. Dusty Rhodes used to do the crap, I can't remember the name, the Lone Ranger or whatever it was, where he'd come out, you know, he'd do a match, he'd do this in every territory he was at. He would do his match, he'd do a full stint there, and then he would do a retirement kind of thing where you get, you know, kicked out or a loser leave town, and then he would come back with a mask on and a hat and all that stuff, but everybody could tell it's Dusty because it's Dusty, you know, and he would still be talking, saying the same stuff, but it wasn't him. And he would do that same thing that eventually would get a big payoff, and he would do it everywhere he went, and it got over everywhere he went. So, again, it's just what's old is new, and recycle, and it works every time. Like, wrestling isn't the hardest thing. Like, once you break it down to it's not the hardest thing in the world once you break it down. So, you know, it is what it is.
So to kind of just go back onto the match, because I feel like we went on a massive tangent, which is fine. That's what this is for, because, you know, we want to take everything that we learn and put it through a modern lens, right? Yeah. So going back to the match, did you like the finish, the way that it all ended and everything? Do you think like it encapsulated the story that they were trying to tell within the match? Yeah,
definitely. You know, and I don't remember if this was the end of the feud fully. I mean, they kind of always feuded, you know, even then to WWE and all that kind of stuff. Could you have gone a different way? Of course. I mean, there's a million finishes you can go. With getting beat up and beat up and beat up, and what they were trying to eventually, this wasn't just, people got to remember, you're also still, like, this isn't the end of Eddie Guerrero. So Do you really want to bump around Eddie for the entire thing and then just a big finish like they would do today and a big decisive 1, 2, 3? Because then where does Eddie go? You know, he's still doing the stuff with the cruiserweights. So again, he snuck by at the end with his mask still intact, which I think is the perfect kind of encapsulation of what Rey is. You know, he's not going to be the guy that just bounces you around and eventually beats you to a pulp and then pins you. Like, he got out of this. He got put into this. He didn't want to be in that with the mask on the line. This was a, you know, I've got to do it. All right, if that's the only way to do it. So again, I think it came out perfect.
Gotcha. So what are your closing thoughts on the match? Like overall, like what does it mean to you as a viewer and you in your history of being a wrestling fan? What does it mean to you for this match?
It's probably one of the, I mean, it should be the blueprint of a cruiserweight match. Not just flips, not just big spots, but wrestling and fighting. I'm just such a proponent of, like, wrestling should be a fight. It shouldn't just be, you know, stunts or this or that. And most people, when they think of cruiserweight wrestling, especially in WCW, because they went through such a phase when it was just moves. And even Rey. Like, there were times where he was wrestling certain people, he was wrestling Hoovy, and it was just a bunch of moves. To me, this was what lucha wrestling in America. Man, I would definitely want to get that across, because, like, this isn't lucha libre. Like, this isn't lucha wrestling. Like, this is Americanized lucha wrestling. But at the same time, this was just a story. It didn't have to be, you know, lucha wrestling or this or that. They told a great story. And I feel like this could be, like, what people mold and take away as this is, to me, what cruiserweight wrestling could be. Still the story, still, you know, character-driven. So much character-driven in this match. This is where Eddie really kind of also, which I look back at history-wise, like when he started becoming this person. Because before, again, he was, you know, he was still the other Eddie. He was, you know, he was kind of babyface Eddie. And then he went to heel Eddie, but he still wasn't like this version yet. Like, the commentators even talk about, like, you know, how good a shape he had gotten getting into this match. Like, to me, this is like the start of what we'd eventually see years and years later, even though it took him a long time to get there. Like, this is Lie, Cheat, and Steal Eddie, way before he became Lie, Cheat, and Steal Eddie. So it's why I like watching it so much, because I watched the evolution of Eddie Guerrero when he was doing just the, you know, singlet, this, that, you know, and babyface. Then he went heel, but he still, again, wasn't, like, showing this facial expressions. He wasn't getting all in. He was just still like a wrestler. This was the character, Eddie Guerrero, coming out. And then he went back to wrestling for a while. Like, it wasn't like, he did this, and then he was just, you know, the great Eddie Guerrero. Same thing we lose with guys like Chris Jericho and Rey Mysterio. Like, this is the evolution of them. This wasn't their final form, which is why I love watching these matches so much.
And it is really cool to see that, you know, like I said, the retrospective, right? Because I've always heard Rey Mysterio is like the greatest little guy that's ever wrestled ever. And I mean, I grew up with him in 2004 being the Cruiserweight champion, and then eventually winning the World Heavyweight Championship, winning the Royal Rumble. And I've always seen that, but I've never seen him at his beginning. And you know, my favorite wrestler, Sami Zayn, currently, that's like, you know, my guy right now, because the underdog thing, right? Yeah. The Road to Redemption happening on NXT over in 2013, I want to say 2014 or so, was one of the greatest stories ever. I even got to tell TJ Wilson how amazing he was in that part of the story, because at the time I was learning about playing your role and everything. So when he was here, I was really glad that I got to share that with him. I was like, hey, like, I get it now. Like, I get the roles thing happening now. Yeah. And like, you played a role in that and everything. So just to see Rey Mysterio back in 97, I'm just like, okay, I see it now, because that wasn't the WWE structure, so to speak. It was, we're telling a story about my mask and a title, and it didn't feel, I don't want to say overproduced, but it didn't feel like it was produced by an agent or something like that. It just felt like two guys, we know the story, we know the time, let's go out there and go do this thing. Yeah,
I do feel like you have to watch that version of Rey to like understand that, hey, this is like the greatest of all time cruiserweights, because he gotten bigger by the time he got to WWE. Like, you know, he put on some size, got a little mass on him, and was working more of a back and forth kind of style. Like, there was a lot in WCW where he was the little guy, like, and he sold it like he was the little guy. He was getting beat up all the time, and he still got beat up a lot in WWE. Like, he still sold a lot, but like not like he does here. Like, it's a different kind of selling. This is like, I don't want to say a child, but like a teenager getting beat up by an adult. You know, not like, hey, just a smaller adult fighting another adult. This was like a teenager, or, you know, getting in a fight with adults and like somehow surviving. which I think is what brought in the kids as well, because you feel like he's like you. Again, rather than like when he got to WWE, he looked like a grown man. He had tattoos everywhere. Like he looked like just another, like a badass, but just short and little. But he was still kick your ass. This was a different character. This was again a vulnerable, supposed to be, and he do his stuff. He's super sweet and he was very humble and kind of stuff. He was like very sweet, humble, and again, so you like had sympathy for him. Great character.
Now, if we were to rate this match, and I'm going to put you on the spot here because this is going to be recorded, so this is going to be put out there into the world.
Yes.
If you were to rate this out of 5 stars, now, as of today, where would you put it?
This is on the Kevin Bernhardt 5-star match.
Heck yeah.
This is my 5-star.
Heck yeah. There's no other 5 stars.
No. This is yeah. No, like really, I don't know what you could do to make this match any better. Like there's no, the crowd's there. The wrestlers are on top of it. There's no big botches. There's no like moments that felt real dull or like, I wish he would have done this instead. There's a couple times, and again, this is so nitpicky watching as me, like where Eddie's still trying to find himself. There's a few times where he's like in the corner, like, getting ready to hit Rey, and he's like, I'm gonna get him. But other than that, like it's just a really good match.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time, honestly, to come on here and talk about this match. I don't know how long we've been talking about it. It's almost an hour now.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that we diverted off of the match and talked about, how it potentially affects the way we see wrestling now. And again, with your insight into everything that you have done before, into what you do now for us here at Reality of Wrestling, I think, this is a good perspective for anybody listening to maybe learn something new without coming to Reality of Wrestling. Obviously, we want you to come here because you're going to learn from Booker himself, and those are like literally the best teachings that you could get anywhere in the industry. But truly, thank you so much for your time today, dude.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kirby Carreon. I am the historian here for Reality of Wrestling. If you'd like for me to cover any match in the future, feel free to send me suggestions to missedretrospective@gmail.com. I'm still learning how to say that properly here recording. But all that email will be open to you guys for you guys to suggest me any matches. I will get it added to the list, and also any guests that you guys would like to see. But thank you so much for your time again, Kevin. Thank you for joining me here for this first episode. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on the Missed Retrospective with Kirby Carreon.